put the money in the bag. I learned this from a politician.
So Persona 5 The Phantom X is a gacha game that is set in the same universe as the original Persona 5 with a completely new cast of characters. It released very recently, and over the course of a couple of days I poured 14 hours into it. I raised my account to level 31. I beat the first palace, and I actually have quite a bit of stuff to say about it. Obviously spoilers for mostly everything up until beating the first palace, and also some spoilers for the original Persona 5 up until beating its first palace as well, because I will be comparing them a bit throughout. One quick thing I have to say, I recently beat Persona 5 Royal this year for the very first time, so I am freshly off the high I got from playing through the legendary game. No, I haven't played Strikers or any other game in the series so far, but I will play them soon, okay? But anyway, add Phantom X to the pile of games that wanna milk 5 success until the cow physically can't do it anymore. Obviously, that's not saying the games are bad or anything, it's just more so that there's clearly a favorite child in the family. But anyway, I was super curious if this game was gonna be good or just a cheap cash grab, and I'm not fully sure what to think about it. I'm gonna talk about all the good first before I get into the bad. The gameplay works just like most Persona games, where you have to balance school life and the metaverse fights, but since this is a mobile game, the slice of life bit is limited to a resource that depletes with every action you do in an in-game day, so you can do anything however many times you want until the game physically stops you from doing so. Which is different from the original Persona 5, which instead had you carefully make choices on what to do each day, because you were limited to doing only 2 things each day, one action in the daytime and another in the evening. Which was a very difficult choice most of the time, because you can't do the exact same thing every single time. So you had to make the choice if you wanted to hang out with a particular person in that particular moment, for example, because you never knew when you would get the opportunity to do that again. Especially in the second half of the story, because a lot of days featured important story segments that you had to do, which didn't allow you to do the optional choices, which was basically a whole day off the calendar. This change is probably done because the Phantom X is a live service game that is designed to probably go on for an infinite amount of time until it stops making enough money to warrant the service still being up. While the console game has an actual ending you are supposed to reach at some point. The Phantom X doesn't give you a time limit, which is completely justified. Why would the team just end the game that could in theory continue until the end of time? Most mobile games don't have an ending, and all gacha games don't have an ending. It could end as in the servers have shut down, but there is never a the story is over type of ending. And even when there is an ending, a new chapter of a completely different story just begins in the next update. It happened with Honkai Impact, and it's probably gonna happen with Genshin, since that game is slowly approaching the release of its 7th and final region. It's gonna happen eventually. Next, the palaces. The original game basically had you go through most of the palace, but this game only requires you to go through not even half of it. Half the palace is basically just rewards you don't need to grab. By the time I saw the final boss, a lot of my map was still unexplored, which does make sense. This is a mobile game, it probably isn't intended to be the most challenging, and Persona is a pretty challenging series, especially during higher difficulties. The actual palace itself was super fun in my opinion. It was your standard Persona palace with enemies, puzzles and challenges throughout, and I don't think there was a lot of times where there was added padding or anything. I thought they were gonna hide it behind a resource system like, oh sorry, you can only play it up until here for today because your coins ran out, but come back tomorrow when you have a full tank. But they didn't do that, which I'm glad they did. They did that for something else, which are the domains that give you level up materials. It's basically a couple battles with enemies that later give you materials needed to upgrade weapons, characters and personas. You know, like Genshin Impact domains basically. The usual thing for gacha games, so I am very used to this gimmick by now, but if you're a Persona fan who hasn't touched a single gacha game, I can see how it can be annoying not being able to progress for basically a whole day unless you pay money or have some extra materials you got from the palace. but even those extras don't last, so eventually you either have to wait or pay. And so far I haven't gotten to the point where I've needed to upgrade a character up to level 70, which I think is the top level, so don't take my word as fact, but I haven't really gotten annoyed at this considering the battles give you a fair amount of rewards at the end, but maybe that changes once you have to upgrade a character up to level 60 or even 70. So far my most leveled character is Skull at level 40, so basically I can't really tell you how the end game looks like. The game is pretty much just an average gacha game. You have to pull for characters with the currency you get throughout or buy, upgrade those characters, there's limited events. The current one is a tie-in with the original Persona 5 for obvious reasons. Let's hope it gets cooler collaborations with other games at some point. So basically don't expect the same thing you would get from a normal Persona game. This comes with all the things you would expect from a gacha game, some questionable gambling included. But of course, the game features social links that give you rewards and social stats, so you still have stuff to work on in the natural Persona way, just with a small twist. But speaking about Persona games in general, this one is still very much connected to the original Persona 5, and I'm just gonna say this, it's very cash grab. It feels more like a Persona 5 bootleg than an actual spin-off, if you catch my drift. Main character is basically Joker, but again, the owl is basically Mona, but again, the girl who looks like Six from Little Nightmares is basically Ryuji and Anne mashed into one. The story is connected to sports just like the first arc in the original with Kamoshida. It's basically Persona 5, but again, at least for the beginning. It's trying to have its own identity, it has its own unique version of the Velvet Room, with its own unique attendant, and it talks about our own desires, and desire being taken away, which is different from the original, which talks about the desires of other people, but it just still feels like there's a guy constantly looking over the employees' shoulders, making sure they don't make it so different from the source material. And brother, the main villain of the first arc is a dude who pushes people in the subway. You know what people call him? The Subway Slammer. Really, bruh? Some of the animation in the cutscenes, for example, is arguably better than the original Atlas game, but so many of the idle animations are reused or just fucking stiff. Most of the soundtrack is also reused, and the songs that are made specifically for this game are just objectively worse, in my opinion. The game has positives, but I just don't see myself pouring hundreds of hours like I have with other gacha games. If you are a fan of both gacha and Persona, I can see you enjoying this, but if you're not a fan of both, especially if you're more on the Persona side, then I don't think it's worth the time. I could probably make a full review, but I don't know, I think I've said enough. I will give it like a 5.5 out of 10.